Right now, Trump has made immigration his end-all be-all, but the rate is so slow because of this judicial slowdown.
Let's talk about the mistake, though, Lindy. Let's talk about the mistake for a second, okay? Because we're talking about a guy who came into the country through legal means. He's gay, and the reason why he fled Venezuela is because he was terrified that the Venezuelan gangs in Venezuela were going to kill him because he's gay. So hold on, let me finish my point. He had a legitimate asylum claim.
Can we just take a step back and ask a broader question? I'm actually with Trump on this. It's one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party, because my views on immigration have been shifting right. Why is it America's responsibility to grant asylum? Like, why? Why is it our responsibility to take people
It's written into law.
I mean, and it's something that was revoked, right, with the new administration. However, but what about the people who were already here?
We can grandfather them in.
Yeah, but he came in here on legitimate asylum claims.
Welcome to Her Take. This is Patrick Bet-David's brainchild. And we're pretty excited, guys. I had ChatGPT write up a little description for you of what the show is going to be, and I already got in trouble with Lindy because I didn't use Grok. So the debates have already begun, but the bottom line is you've got real conversations that happen here. Different voices collide, clash, and sometimes even connect. There are no scripts, except for this one that I'm starting the show with. No echo chambers, and just smart and spirited debates. Ladies, please introduce yourselves briefly.
I'm Anna Kasparian. I'm the host and executive producer of The Young Turks, and I'm super excited to be here.
Jillian Michaels, I do lunges for a living, so I'll be contributing that later.
I'm Lindy Li. I'm a political strategist who recently left the Democratic cult.
Awesome. I'm Amy Dangerfield. I've been working for Valuetainment for a couple of years now in the media distribution department.
All right, guys, are you ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
We are going to start with Judge Hannah Dugan. So, Anna, you want to set this one up for everybody? What's going on here?
Sure. So this story is definitely catching a lot of attention because of the fact that a judge got arrested by the feds because of the fact that she was unwilling to cooperate with ICE, which had a warrant to arrest and detain an undocumented immigrant who was actually being heard during this hearing because of the fact that he had severely beaten someone by punching them 30 times.
Oh, one was a woman, right? The guy's girlfriend he punched out.
Interestingly enough, there was two people tried to intervene as he was beating the crap out of this guy. The guy apparently asked him to turn the music down. He had, the man in question is Eduardo Flores Ruiz. Entered the country illegally not once but 2 times.
Right.
And the reason why he was in court is because he severely beat someone, punched him in the face 30 times because the guy asked him to turn his music down. At that point, his girlfriend tried to intervene to stop it. He then proceeded to beat her, and then a third person intervened, and that third person was also assaulted by this guy. So basically, ICE showed up. They had a warrant to detain him as he was in court. But the judge, for whatever reason, thought it would be a great idea to assist him in evading ICE, allowed him to leave or exit the building through the juror's entryway, and then ICE basically had to chase the guy to detain him. A week later, the federal government decided, no, she needs to face charges, and they arrested her.
This is absolutely disgusting. Can we please show a picture of what the judge looks like so everyone can see who is masquerading as a servant of the justice system? This person is subverting everything in the name of, frankly, an illegal alien who should not be here. Look at her. I mean, come on. This is it's a complete desecration of everything that we believe in. And I'm speaking as a naturalized immigrant who came here the right way. I'm insulted. My family waited years to come here. We, like you, actually, like my friend Amy, we both did things the right way. We didn't hop the line. We didn't storm the southern border,
It cost a lot of money. It took a lot of time. And
came through JFK Airport. My family created hundreds of jobs. We weren't parasites or leeches on the system. This is the way it should be done.
Well, look, I think this particular case goes beyond someone simply entering the country illegally.
Right.
I also don't love using words like parasites to refer to human beings, but putting that aside, this is someone who has committed violent crimes, who has no problem literally punching someone in the face 30 times. Like, I get that left-wingers, Democrats, want to always do the opposite of what the Trump administration wants, but let's take a beat and really reevaluate what's being defended here by Democrats.
And why is it being defended? That is more so my
Yeah.
question. We understand that sometimes, just like legal citizens of this country, immigrants do terrible things. I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe the parasitic label is going a little too far. However,
I don't think so in the case of wife beater.
I understand
hold on.
that, but I'm saying labeling immigrants overall. My question for you, being somebody who's more so on the left side of things, what is with the left's position to want to defend these people literally till the ends of the earth when parasitic behavior, and I'll give you that label for this person, is fully on display? Why do they want to defend it so much to the point that they're literally concealing and trying to get this person out of the judge chambers through a backdoor entrance?
I
It's
think
insane.
the country had a problem with hyperpartisanship prior to Trump, but Trump basically took that issue and now it's on steroids. And so when your brain is so broken that you're unwilling to agree with the Trump administration on something that's totally agreeable, which is bringing this guy who's here illegally to justice and deporting him, you've lost the plot, right? So I'm in favor of immigration. I think that immigration is what makes this country great. Obviously, I want legal immigration. I also understand that some people are going to try to enter illegally. There are people here with undocumented status who have been here for decades, who have contributed to this country, who have contributed and been productive members of society.
I think we need Native American.
Yeah.
And literally, right?
Yeah, and
Armenian
we need to,
parents,
Armenian
immigrants.
parents. I mean, my parents came in legally, but look, I just think we have a broken immigration system, and I think we need to make it easier for people who want to come here and build, not only build lives for themselves, but contribute to making this country great. We need to have avenues in which they can do that legally.
That doesn't really exist right now.
It doesn't.
There
It
is
doesn't.
no
But
middle
that doesn't address the
ground.
fact that you cannot have these judges who are placed in positions of power
I agree.
acting like these vigilante warriors. It's just so inappropriate. And Trump derangement syndrome is real.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for you here, though, for just a moment, because I happen to agree with all of you regarding this particular incident. However, I could point to several others. For example, a Trump-appointed judge, okay, and her name was, I believe it was Stephanie Garrett. Does this ring a bell? She had a kid who was 20 years old, who crossed the border as an unaccompanied minor, forgive me. And they struck a deal with DHS where they said, listen, these kids are now applying for asylum. You can't deport any of them right now until their asylum case can be adjudicated.
Right.
The kid is not a gang member.
Right.
He was arrested once for drugs, not dealing drugs, doing drugs. And out of the country he goes, and a Trump-appointed judge was like, no, bring him back. Then you've got the gay makeup artist, who I briefly referenced yesterday. And this one, guys, I'm with you on 99% of this. But this is where Trump goes off the rails.
I agree with you on that. I agree
All right,
with
there's
you.
a kid, his name is Christian. He's a gay Venezuelan makeup artist, a theater enthusiast, comes over from, as mentioned, Venezuela, all right? And he gets scooped up by ICE because he has 2 tattoos that actually mean mother and father.
Correct, yeah.
But they misinterpret them as gang tattoos. He applied for asylum upon entering the country. They deport him to El Salvador, that's not his country, to a prison. He's not a criminal. Then it's ordered to bring him back.
Right.
And not just any
They
prison, a mega
won't
prison.
do it. And this is where I would say to anybody who's 100% for this mass deportation, what about that? Why is that happening? Someone answer that question
Because the
for me.
process is so slow right now that mistakes are bound to happen. I think it's a few 100,000.
There's the kid.
He's deporting.
There it is. That
Trump.
kid is gay. Does
I-
that
can I
look like a
give you-
friggin'
Wait,
gang
can I finish?
banger
Can I
to you?
please finish this?
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So,
Go.
right now, Trump has made immigration his end-all, be-all, but the rate is so slow because of this judicial slowdown.
Right.
He's encountering so many impediments. So he's trying to accelerate the process, and by virtue of that, mistakes are going to be made. But his base doesn't care. They don't care about a gay.
Let's talk about the mistake, though, Lindy. Let's talk about the mistake for a second, okay? Because we're talking about
But look
a
how gay
guy
this kid is.
who came into
This
the
is not a
country
gangbanger,
through
guys.
legal means, okay? Applied for asylum, did so through legal means. He's gay, and the reason why he fled Venezuela is because he was terrified that the Venezuelan gangs in Venezuela were going to kill him because he's gay. So hold on, let me finish my point. He had a legitimate asylum claim. And if you want to talk about like, oh, well, mistakes were made, we're talking about a guy who was sent to an El Salvadorian prison where he's probably being abused in all sorts of ways because of the fact that he's gay.
We don't even know if he's alive.
Okay, can we just take a step back and ask a broader question? I'm actually with Trump on this. It's one of the reasons why I left the Democratic Party, because my views on immigration have been shifting right. Why is it America's responsibility to grant asylum? Like, why? Why is it our responsibility to take people in?
It's written into law.
I mean, and it's
Like,
something
why
that
do we
was
need to?
revert, right, with the new administration.
I agree
However,
with
but
that.
what about the people who were already here? And like
We can grandfather them in.
Yeah, but he came in here
Let's
on
grandfather
legitimate
him in.
asylum claims.
Exactly.
And we had this conversation at dinner, and you were telling me about this. I nearly didn't believe you. I'm like, are you
I'm sure.
He didn't do anything wrong? No,
I'm
Jillian, I know. I went home and I did my own research, and honestly, I'm really saddened by this case, and we need to have some type of recourse in place where it should be measure twice, cut once, but in the instance where there are mistakes, we do need to have a system in place, some recourse,
100%.
and especially
Get him back.
And there's many people
What
who
the
are speaking
hell?
out about this.
Yes, I agree.
Stopping you from saying, okay, we've got a big task at hand. You can even smear the Biden administration as much as you want. They let 300,000 people in a month. Millions came over. Tons of gotaways. If 1% of them are criminals, which I was told by Brandon Judd, who previously ran the border, that's too many. 140,000 criminals, Chinese national, like terrorists. We get it. Gang members, no good. But when someone goes, yeah, no, that guy, gay makeup artist, mistake, oops, sorry, bring him back.
And that's the thing. That's the thing that I don't really understand about this administration, because in the areas in which Trump was actually seen favorably, right, on immigration, for instance, he's actually now losing a lot of goodwill among Americans, independents in particular, who are like, yeah, this immigration issue under Biden is untenable and we need to do something about it. Trump comes in, he has a high approval rating when it comes to immigration policies because of these mistakes and the administration's unwillingness to right these wrongs and take ownership of their mistakes. He's starting to lose favorability on the areas in which he's most popular.
I think people are just so angry about what happened over the past 4 years.
Let's talk about why. Why don't we lay out why that's so bad for everybody? The difference of illegal immigration and legal immigration.
Exactly. Let's be honest about what happened here.
Right, very different.
And
very
again,
different
because
thing.
coming in as a legal immigrant and coming in as a refugee and seeking asylum, completely different story.
Let's talk about what happened.
Because why would you use the word parasite? Elaborate on that.
Well, I'm talking about why people are so angry right now.
I get it.
Because Biden fucked up. He truly did. And he lied to everybody saying that we needed a bipartisan immigration bill. No, we needed a president who was willing to actually, close our borders to make sure that we had a sensible immigration system. Biden just didn't do any of that. And he let all these millions of people in, and they're a drain on our resources. And I live in a big city, so I see it literally every day. You cannot tell me this isn't happening. I live in Philadelphia.
It is happening. We're seeing it in California with Gavin Newsom finding some sort of a loophole to use taxpayer dollars, which is meant to be illegal.
Yeah, I mean,
how did he figure this out?
He wanted to provide health care to undocumented immigrants in California, and honestly, he totally underestimated how much it would cost. And right now, the state's in a lot of financial trouble, partly because of that, partly because of mismanagement of funds. I mean, the state can't account for $24 billion they allocated for homelessness.
Insane.
Yeah, I mean, the state is a complete nightmare right now.
But when you're taking those dollars, and you've utilized some sort of a loophole, which I can't even fully understand. I looked it up once. In the future, we'll be on Grok. But he somehow, because technically, I guess federally, you are not allowed to do it.
Correct, right. But these are state resources.
That's
so
how
he's
he did
using
it.
state resources to do
Jillian, you
this.
asked me why I use language like that, because they are a drain on our system, and Americans need so much help right now.
Yes,
I want to take care of our own people because they're ailing. Our kids are going into deteriorating schools. We lack the resources to take care of our own people, and that's just my point of view.
I agree. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? And it's like we need to. I said that last night at dinner. We need to focus on ourselves and get ourselves in a great position where we are able to once again open up to asylum seekers and bring people over and help them. But if we can't even figure out what's going on in our own house, how are we meant to help everybody else at the same time? You brought up the bipartisan bipartisan border bill. I think that is an important thing to touch on because so many people are like, hey, the Biden admin really tried to sort out the situation. I'd love to know what you think as someone who comes from the left, because wasn't that like an omnibus bill, and there was a bunch of like aid for Ukraine and a bunch of other things wrapped up inside that bill?
Yeah, they did include all sorts of provisions that weren't really related to reforming our immigration system.
Right.
Okay, so I'm actually of two minds on that issue because I think that the Biden administration totally neglected the border until it became a political liability. And then all of a sudden, he's reaching out to Republicans in the Senate, begging them to pass immigration reform.
Why was that necessary, though, when by the swipe of a pen,
let me
Trump
explain.
shut the border? And we should give him credit for that.
Sure, let me explain why, though. Let me
explain.
Because, yes, it is true, and we saw it happen. The executive branch has the unilateral power to make some pretty significant decisions at the border. However, as soon as a Democratic president gets elected, he or she can reverse all of it. That's why it's important for Congress to pass legislation that has staying power.
I understand.
You know? But the thing is, it was such an emergency in my eyes, and in the eyes of millions of Americans around the country. We needed to stop this like flood of migrants coming in. And I can't believe I'm playing this role, but I'm about to say something controversial again.
Do it.
Shocker.
So,
you're kidding.
The great replacement theory that they call neo-Nazi ideology.
Okay, explain for everyone what that is.
So, for those who aren't familiar, it's the idea that Democrats are letting in millions of people from like South America, Central America, like random parts of the world, Africa, whatever. And they want to bring them into these Democratic strongholds, and they're registering them as voters to create this permanent, illegitimate electoral majority. And when Tucker Carlson said this, when other people said, when Elon said it, they labeled him as Nazi, as Hitler. I actually think it's happening.
I mean, you look at the state, when you look at all of the states that Harris won by sweeping majority, pretty much all of those, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's all of them were states that don't mandate any type of voter ID. And I'm really happy that like the SAVE Act, all of these things it still needs to go through the Senate.
What's wrong with voter ID? I just don't understand
nothing
what's wrong with voter ID.
Absolutely
That's an excellent
nothing.
question, and I see that completely. However, as far as I understand it, and everyone correct me if I'm wrong, there's absolutely no proof that illegals were voting.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy theory.
Registering them as
I'm open to evidence. I'd love to see the evidence.
Hold on. That's not what I meant. I mean, like, they have them in the country, and over the course of years, you know, I'm not saying overnight they become citizens.
These immigrants tend to be far more socially conservative than the Democratic Party is. In fact, increasingly so.
I mean, a lot of them, yes, especially ones that are fleeing communist countries. However, but that's
they don't know that.
Do you really think that's a sweeping majority, though? When we
I do actually. A lot of Latin American
when they come to Philadelphia,
I mean,
all the migrants that they're being shipped to New York.
They're all very
but
religious.
they don't know that. They think that they don't know that Democrat, like in their minds, they haven't been educated in the difference.
I think the Democratic Party they're the party of so-called do-gooders, and they want to feel good about themselves, and they want to feel like they're saving they want to believe that. I think that's really the motivating factor behind this, and more importantly, as soon as Donald Trump went down that escalator and started talking about Mexican and immigrants,
rapists,
that triggered Democrats, and they wanted to brand themselves as the party that's going to protect immigrants from Donald Trump. That's really at the center of this. Like the idea that they're importing people so they can stay in power. I mean, obviously it hasn't worked out.
Importing people, letting them in. They were going to come anyway, just letting them in. And Democrats realized they spotted this as an amazing opportunity to solidify electoral gains.
Lindy, let me tell you something about Democrats, okay? And you should know this better than
leadership.
Hold
and
on,
I'm telling you
exactly, which is why you should know this better than anyone. The idea that they're thinking ahead and they're plotting and they're like the smart people who are like figuring out ways to stay in power forever is laughable.
It's very obvious.
They were headed
by
toward a freaking iceberg in the 2024 presidential election, and they were totally in the dark about it.
They're still
in the dark about it.
But wait, hold on.
This is not a savvy party at all.
I just want to ask you guys one thing, though. Have you not seen the graph that shows what the turnout for voters in the 2020 election was like compared to all previous elections, compared even to the 2024 election as well, because obviously people were more on guard.
Like millions more people voted.
Millions of more people voted. Do you think that just millions of more Americans...
So the argument for a potentially, which I personally, I've seen no proof of it. However, the argument for a potentially rigged election in 2020, meaning Trump was robbed. By the way, he has not provided any evidence of that to this day.
Wait,
hold on. Is that okay? And you'll have your chance. Is that millions more people voted in 2020, which is what shifted the vote towards Biden?
That is a large part of it. That is a large part of it. There could have been other mechanisms through which they cheated, but that is definitely a large part of it. You look at even California. The last time California was a red state was before a legislation was enacted that basically said if you come from an asylum-seeking family, migrants, you will not be entitled to any aid unless this democratic bill passes. And since then, California has been a blue state. And we are creating incentives within this country that are bringing people in who are coming in. I agree with you. There are a lot of immigrants who are hardworking people who are going to contribute so much to this society. Exactly. However, the incentives are wrong. And now they're bringing in people who, when they look at the two options, one party's saying, we're going to kick you out, and one saying, we're going to give you a $10,000 card.
Who do you think they're going to spend?
Who are they going to vote for?
Hold on.
And what is the caliber of people that are going to be attracted into the country when that is the main messaging?
I mean, hold that. I want to add to that and then let you answer.
Okay.
So then in continuing with that thought process, the argument is that in some states you can vote in local elections. In some places, if you're illegal, you can vote for a mayor or city councilman. Now, we all saw Obama come out and lobby for Karen Bass. I'm not saying where, I'm not sure where, but it is a thing in some states. If you're illegal, you can vote in like city elections.
There are some instances, I think in New York City.
Keep going, though.
They potentially wanted to, and I don't know if this actually went through, allow legal residents who might not have full citizenship status to vote in local elections.
Hang on, I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
And then you don't need the voter ID, so everyone's saying, well, that's highly suspicious. Why not? Which is like, why not?
I'm so sick of the voter ID debate. Like, let's just do the fucking voter ID and get, like, I'm done debating it. It's so annoying.
It's not a debate. The argument is this is why people think they're gaming elections. Why do it?
No, I know. Just do it.
There's one more thing I want you to consider, only because I personally have a hard time contending with it. I'm also under the impression, and everyone correct me if I'm wrong, that you get more seats in Congress based on the size of your...
Ding, ding,
that is true. That is true.
Okay, so then
based on the census.
Based on the census, illegal or not, so you could technically make any president in power a lame duck if you control Congress, right? So that's the argument, although there's no proof
Jillian,
of it.
that is but Jillian, you have the proof, though. You have the proof because they are fighting so hard to commandeer the census and the way people are counted. You hit on a jackpot like unwittingly because these Democrats, they are trying so hard to make sure that illegals are counted in the census. Republicans are doing the exact opposite. You see what I mean?
That's the tough part, Anna. That's the part where I'm like, it does seem pretty friggin' conspiratorial. Why have all of these things? Come on in. If you open borders, just because we can't get a bipartisan bill, baloney. No ID. Why? Weird. Oh, here's all these incentives: free healthcare, interest-free loans,
free hotels, free cash.
Bizarre. And who's the party giving it away? The Democrats. And then, by the way, you get more seats in Congress. It is a little bit like, I get it's tin hat because we don't have hard proof of it. But there's a lot there.
There's a ton
and look,
of
it depends. Like what we're talking about is state policy, not federal policy.
They're all coordinating.
Because there is a federal ban. Hold on, Lindy. Because there is a federal ban on public dollars going toward undocumented immigrants, but on a state level, yeah, you're right.
Newsom giving away health care.
So I agree with you when it comes to states like California. Yes, it is incentivized to come into the country illegally. I agree. Yes.
Okay, let's put a button on this one because I feel like you and I need to do this.
Yeah.
Legal immigration. I think it's important that we establish how different this is as opposed to illegal immigration.
Right.
And historically, in my understanding, I work for the United Nations Refugee Agency as a volunteer. But I got an education on the fact that when people are allowed to immigrate legally, they stimulate the economy, they bring their culture, and I think that's one of the things in America we pride ourselves on. Like, I got an Armenian over here, I got a Chinese lady over here. What are you, Australian? What the hell are you?
I am Australian.
Like, it's a melting pot just at the table, and I love that about our country. I wouldn't trade it. And we have a diminishing birth rate. here in America. We need bodies. We need taxpayers. And one more thing to throw out. When you look at the top Fortune 500 companies, I think over 400 of them are run by immigrants or the children of immigrants.
Right.
It's the hustle mentality because like we came here poor.
I love that though. That's also, let's throw that out. Yeah. Any final thoughts on this one before I move us on to the next one?
I do think we need to reform our immigration system. I agree that it's wrong to have states incentivize illegal immigration. And look, immigration needs to be controlled on some level, because if you have an open border situation, that really does depress the wages of American workers who are protected by minimum wage standards. Undocumented immigrants aren't. So a lot of times when they come in here to work, they get exploited. They get paid way less than minimum wage. And that screws over American workers. Honestly, it exploits the undocumented folks who are in the country. And it's just wrong. So I'm in favor of reforming our immigration system. I'm very much in favor of immigration, but I want it to be done legally.
Totally agree.
I don't want people to be exploited, and I want Americans to be protected. It's that simple.
That's
Jillian, I want to bring up
take.
a country. I do want to bring up a point, though. I mentioned this to you behind the scenes. When a country like China or Poland or South Korea, they say we want to have a homogenous country. We want a culturally cohesive society where there aren't disruptions like pro-Hamas militants on college
wait a second.
campuses.
You can't equate a homogenous society, which I'm assuming means all Chinese people, all black people, all white people, all Christian people, or all Muslim people.
That's what they want, actually.
But that's not. But then saying
that's not America's DNA.
Is a very different.
I'm just saying that's a counter argument.
Not to mention,
because it's a much more stable. Like you don't see these like mass serial events. It just doesn't happen. Like in Japan, everything's like quiet, and it's a huge deal when someone uses a knife to attack people. You know what I mean? Like everything is just
but
like.
What does that have to do? I feel like we're conflating two totally separate issues. I don't know what that would have to do with us being a
They're
melting
very
pot.
anti-immigration there. I'm just saying that's the counter argument. Like Hungary is like that as well.
But we
increasingly.
historically are not.
Right, exactly.
I mean, outside of the atrocities that were committed against Native Americans, I think our greatest strength has been the diversity of
I think we've gone way too much in the other direction in recent years, like letting millions of people in with no like.
If you're anti-American, get the fuck out.
So
you're going to chant death to America, I will personally remove you.
Have you seen our college campuses? They are swarming with anti-American. They're burning our flags. They're shitting on our allies. You know, there's so much anti-Semitism on our college campuses.
I totally agree with you there, but I think the majority, this is part of the vetting process. This, in my opinion, if you come in legally, hopefully you will not be burning the flag when you get your green card. And should you be burning the flag, I'm hoping you get kicked the hell out of the country immediately.
And that's why I agree with Secretary Rubio on removing that Mahmoud guy.
Oh, if we're going to go to Mahmoud Khalil, I'm going to be on your side here. Do we want to tackle that one?
Really? I don't know.
Anna,
I'm about to blow a gasket.
I hate
she
this
should
guy.
never be here.
Why? What do you know about him?
Here's what we know about him.
Tell me.
He's a representative.
Because he hurt the feelings of Israel, and we're not allowed to do that in America. That's the one country we need to be totally hands off on. Poor, sweet little Israel, right?
Like, hold on. We can absolutely litigate that one.
Sure.
But here's my problem with him. And again, nobody has corrected me in asking these two questions.
Okay,
Number one, are you associated at a very high level with the CUAD, Columbia University Apartheid Divest Group? He is. Correct? Okay. Table it.
Okay.
This is a group that on their Substack has a tribute to Yahya Sinwar, who orchestrated October 7th. Get out. I'm finished. I can't with him. Not with you, of course. But
I deeply, deeply disagree with
How?
idolizing anyone who has done anything associated with October 7th. October 7th was a disgusting atrocity.
But he does.
But hold on. You either support free speech or you don't.
He's not an American.
Hold on. It doesn't matter. If you're in the country legally, as he was, Lindy, either you understand our laws or you don't, and you don't understand our laws, okay? So our laws in our country indicate,
the Secretary of State happens to agree with me.
I don't care what the Secretary of State cares about or believes, okay? I'm telling you what the law is.
He's the guy in charge.
Here's the law, Lindy.
Hold on.
This is the law.
You don't have to be cruel about it.
Do you believe in free speech or not?
No, cruel. This is a heated.
Do you believe in free speech or not?
Like losing her.
Oh, no,
I am losing it. I am losing it.
Hold on.
Because here's the thing. All the people who made a big deal and I made a big deal about this as well, about the left trying to shut people up who they disagreed with.
I understand.
Are now providing cover for the same treatment that's being carried out by the other side. So listen, I don't agree with supporting Sinwar or Hamas. That kind of rhetoric disgusts me.
He's that guy.
However, he's in the country legally, okay? He's going to Colombia. Since he's in the country legally, he's going to Colombia. He is protected by our Constitution. That means the same First Amendment rights that we enjoy, he enjoys.
So what you're saying is if there was an American citizen who was in there doing the exact same thing, the same punishment that he received would not be applied equally to the American citizen. And I get it.
Hold on, he got the visa on the idea that he would come here to study, not militate in favor of Hamas. So that's a standard. So that's a standard you want to set, Lindy? So your standard is if you come to the United States, that is the standard.
Who's the arbiter of what kind of speech is acceptable?
Exactly. And I was going to say that I agree with you for the most part, but this is a slippery slope because who's to say that eventually being a Christian is one thing that is considered to be extreme and they'll kick you. No, I'm just saying in the most extreme case. I understand that, but it's who's the arbiter of that?
Exactly.
I get what you're saying.
That's what I'm worried about.
There is some nuance, though, and I actually interviewed Alan Dershowitz about this. Whether you love him or whether you hate him, he is a constitutional attorney. I know, hold on. And he actually was saying that the facts have yet to come out whether or not or what rights this guy is entitled to. And arguably, if you are in support of a terrorist group, does that, no matter who you are, American or otherwise, does that not necessarily account to, quote, free speech?
It depends.
If it's supporting a terrorist organization, American or otherwise.
It depends.
That would be the argument.
If you are providing material support to a terrorist group, okay, we're talking about something completely different in that context. There is no evidence that Khalil has provided material support to Hamas or any terrorist group at all. And thank you for acknowledging that it is a slippery slope. Because if you don't protect the speech you disagree with, and again, I disagree with anyone who supports Hamas or Sinwar, okay, that will turn around and haunt you when you exercise speech that's considered controversial by your political opponent.
But Anna, here would be the other argument. What about rape gangs in Europe? Because culturally speaking, you're for Sharia law, and these kids are raping these young girls because it's normal in their culture.
What we have to realize.
This is not like an upstanding citizen that I want to let in here. This is the vetting process of legal immigration that I'd be like,
Jillian, I would wager to say that rallying in support and trying to drum up support for Hamas or even anti-Israel causes is inherently providing support to Hamas. Like doing this stuff, like I truly believe it. I stand with it. I can't believe that.
I mean, was he in support of Hamas or is it more so
I see your point.
Palestinian? Because there is a difference and people try to conflate the two. They are a little bit different.
Like on the website.
It was specifically
exactly.
Okay, so I get that. But the thing is, okay, so imagine, just play out this hypothetical for me. Imagine Harris came into power. Imagine that we have 8 years of Harris, and by the end of that, self-proclaimed, socialism, all of these things come out, and eventually it gets to the point where religion is no longer accepted in the United States, and all of a sudden you're considered to be an extremist, you're considered to be a bigot, you're considered to be possibly even a terrorist if you hold Christian ideals. I know that sounds crazy and dystopian, but play it with me for a second. Play it with me for a second.
Yeah, it's subjective.
What if we don't defend people's ability now to speak about things that we disagree with? Imagine we are in a situation like that 8 years down the road and the same people are persecuting us. Wouldn't we
100%?
Thank you for being respectful and talking to me, so I appreciate that. Did Christians perpetrate a terrorist attack?
Will you get over here? Listen,
but they
open up, child. Open up the thing. There you go.
There have been horrendous things done in the name of Christianity.
I don't mean child like you're behaving like a child. I mean you're so much younger than me.
No, but I also don't put up with bullshit. So first of all, Kamala Harris is Christian. She would never. That's
is she? I mean,
hold on. We're going super far. Wait. We're going way too far off the rails. Here's what I would let's put a button on this one. I think the point you're making is free speech is the first friggin' amendment.
He needs
and it's a dangerous if we start clipping this guy's wings, where does it go? And now I also see your point, because I don't want anti-American sentiment in the country either.
Anti-Semitic.
But I haven't seen, is there any evidence of him espousing anti-American sentiment? Is there any evidence of him himself vocalizing
I haven't done
support
the homework
for
on
Hamas?
anything outside of the support for Hamas
And by the way,
and it ended for me there, Anna.
And you know who else did? Bill Maher, who is a deep supporter of Israel. There's no question about that. I give him so much credit because he has the foresight to see the problem with arresting and attempting to deport people like Khalil, because speech needs to be protected. If we believe in our constitutional rights, we must protect
violence.
them.
It's tough to litigate this without.
Where has he incited violence, though?
A tribute to Yahya Sinwar.
That's inherently.
Pull that up. It's in the Substack.
Exactly.
You know
it's
that
in the CUAD Substack. And it says like a tribute to Yahya Sinwar. Like, forget it.
We have Klan
point.
members in this country. Klan members are protected by the First Amendment. And by the way, they should be until they act on it. If they actually carry out violence, that's when they're prosecuted. But their speech is protected, and it should be protected.
Here's the question.
Even though I loathe Klan members, I loathe white supremacism, but it doesn't matter if they believe those things and they say those things. They're protected.
Here's my top question, though. When you're vetting people through our dream legal immigration process, that one day, should it ever come to pass, this fantastical idea that could ever occur, we all hope, wouldn't we then say, like, who are you? What are you about? What do you believe? And if it's, I support Yahya Sinwar, I don't know, that'd be a big red. Okay, thanks for playing.
To me, part of the problem we didn't yet address
is that there's one where literally on their Substack, there's one where if you pull up the CUAD Substack and it'll say a tribute to Yahya Sinwar.
And Jillian, to that point,
it's like it is. It's just bananas.
Something that we didn't yet address is on his visa application. The primary purpose of his stay was to study. He didn't say anything about agitating in favor or against Israel. Had he made those comments, perhaps the officer viewing his application would have given him a different result.
Should we have a questionnaire specifically pertaining to Israel and what your thoughts are on Israel in order to decide whether or not you're allowed to come into the country?
It's anti-West sentiment, in my opinion. It's also pro-terror.
Exactly.
Hamas is a terror group, Anna. Like,
I think we're not addressing the elephant in the room, and the reason why a lot of these students are protesting is because they're seeing the slaughter of a lot of innocent people in Gaza who have no way of escaping. So I get that supporters of Israel and Israel itself does not like the criticism, but again, do you believe in the spirit of America, which includes the freedom of expression, or not? And if you don't, then don't get mad when BLM goes out there and says some pretty disgusting things about all white people being, one thing or another. You know what I'm saying?
I just feel like Hamas has got to be one of the most disgusting, filthy, horrendous. Like, Anna, they were sodomizing men and then shooting them in the back.
I'm not a fan of Hamas. No one's sitting here defending Hamas. Let's be clear about that.
It's anybody. You lose me. I hear you and I see your point, but I just can never in my lifetime advocate for this person being in the country when you know what happened. And I do. We can
Where
talk
are we going
about
to deport?
Israel.
Where are we going to deport the Klan's members?
Well, my question would be. Do you, if they're advocating, if their speech, and this is again where we sort of do need to defer to a constitutional attorney, so let's make a note. We cover this today. That'll be a good guest.
Okay. Wait, Julie, the difference with the Klan members, they're Americans, they're citizens, they were here. They're homegrown. Like, we can hate them, we can detest everything they stand for.
But he is here legally, and the Constitution says persons, not citizens.
Okay, let me bring up another woman.
Which is valid.
Rumiesa Öztürk, okay?
Go.
She's in the country getting a PhD. She's a Turkish national, but she's in the country legally getting a PhD. She co-wrote an op-ed for the Tufts University student paper criticizing how Israel is prosecuting the war in Gaza. Simply. That's all she did. She co-published an op-ed. The federal government sent agents to arrest her, plainclothes FBI agents, to arrest her in broad daylight and take her into detention because she has an opinion.
I did not know this.
This is less of a. I'm not wishy-washy on this one because.
But Lindy,
okay.
that's the point I'm trying to make, Lindy.
Yeah, I get it.
You can't pick and choose.
You should have to pick and choose because all the cases are so different.
I don't see that. I don't see them as that different.
I mean,
It's all
the gay
speech.
makeup artist to this person, they're completely
should be
different
a case
scenarios.
by
You do have to find the nuance, but I understand that you're a free speech absolutionist. Is that the right word?
Absolutist. I wouldn't even say absolutist. I think there are some very limited instances in which someone's speech is actually inciting violence and causing harm to people's lives. In that case, we're talking about something different. In this case, when we're talking about Khalil, look, I'd love to see the evidence of him inciting violence. If he himself participated in inciting violence and caused harm to others, then we're having a conversation. But the Trump administration hasn't presented a shred of evidence to that effect. And I just cannot sit by and say that it's okay for this to happen because, again, it is a violation of constitutional rights.
By participating in these anti-Semitic, anti-America student protests, he is inherently inciting violence.
Beyond anti-Semitism, though. This is the
I'm
most
with you. I'm completely
disgusting
agree with you.
attack on humanity that has occurred in my
could not
lifetime.
agree more.
And I get it. I understand that this. Okay, so let's litigate. In fact, maybe since you bring up Israel, we should I guess touch upon that. And here's what I would like. I have not done a deep dive on this subject matter because there's no winning in this argument, which is unfortunate. But I would like to establish the following thing, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Being Jewish or Israel, Judaism, being called a Jew seems to be associated with three very separate things. Number one, it's an ethnicity. So, for example, I'm like 37% Ashkenazi Jew. Number two, it's a religion. I have no experience in the religion because my mom just didn't raise me with it because her mom was a war bride and was terrified of the Nazis. Long story short, I had no idea I was Jewish until I got my 23andMe. We all know this story by now. So there's a religion. On top of that, now there's a government associated with it. And it seems as though when people want to criticize the government, they immediately get labeled as anti-Semitic. And
I agree.
That's
and that's
absolutely
a problem.
not, and that's a problem.
Yeah, because I don't see the Israeli government as a representation of Jewish people, of all Jewish people. In fact, there are a ton of Jewish people who have been, by the way, in Israel, who are protesting and very critical of the current Israeli government.
I have many friends who are in Israel that are not a fan of Netanyahu.
The way Netanyahu is trying to crush them for protesting him is disgusting. Even in America, you have a lot of American Jews who are critical of how Israel is prosecuting the war. So I do not conflate Jewish people with the Israeli government. I see them as two different things.
And I mean, even look at America. I mean, if people were criticizing the Biden administration and criticizing everything that was happening over the period of the last 4 years, does that make them anti-American? No. In fact, I'd say a lot of Republicans are probably the most pro-American people. They were criticizing the government. It's a distinctly different thing.
It bothers me that you are incapable of doing that without immediately being painted with an anti-Semitic brush. Now, personally, I lean largely towards Israel simply because it's like if Hamas returned the hostages and laid down their guns, what would Israel do?
Well, I mean,
whereas
Netanyahu's been bragging about the fact that he's obstructed efforts to do a hostage exchange.
I did not
and
know
end this war.
I didn't know that.
Like, the problem right now is a lot of people are dying and a lot of people are suffering, including Jewish people living in Israel, as a result of his disgusting leadership that's totally narcissistic and self-interested.
He wants to avoid Netanyahu. That's very different than being an anti-Semite.
He wants to avoid actually going through the trial for his corruption charges. And the best way to skirt responsibility for that is to keep this going.
I have heard that. I've done. Does anybody have a counter argument to that? Because I'm not educated enough to push back on it.
I'm anti-Bibi because he's so.
That's interesting. You agree?
He was so invested in Trump's victory because he saw that as his escape from justice.
100%.
Okay,
you're right about that.
So I like the Supreme Court, parental rights. Dear God,
this one should be less contentious, Jillian.
Everybody's alive.
This one should be less contentious.
I don't know. Because now I'm going to be the odd man on this one.
I'm kidding. This will be super contentious.
All right, jump balled here, team. So, Supreme Court parental rights case, Mahmoud v. Taylor. Who wants to set this one up? What's going on? Anybody want to take it, or I'll pass to Anna, unless.
So
Amy, you want to jump on it?
essentially, my understanding is there is a cohort of different religious families. We're talking Muslims, Jewish people, Christian families who want to see an opt-out option available for a range of books that have been introduced for pre-K and elementary school children. Now, initially, when this push came out, that was a part of a whole inclusivity push back in 2022. They said they were going to release these books and distribute them to the children. However, they would make parents aware, and there would also be an option to opt out. By 2023, that was rescinded, and this is why the parents are now taking it to the courts, because essentially what the schools initially promised them was retracted for no apparent reason. And for these parents, they want to be the ones to decide when they have these sensitive conversations with their kids, not the school.
Yeah.
And my perspective is there is nothing wrong with that. I think we should be.
Amen.
We should be dealing with these things within our families and not deferring to the school system to take care of it. So, I mean, I'm in full support of these families who are seeking recourse for this and who want to maintain the rights over what their children learn. I mean, for me, there's nothing wrong with that.
So there's a few other details to this that I think are super relevant, because what we're talking about here are not high school students. We're talking about elementary school students. And what I thought was really fascinating about how this school district approached this issue is, given the nature of these books and how it brings up things like same-sex couples, you would typically find this type of curriculum in the context of health, right? Like health curriculum. But the school district decided to put it under the context of literature and English. And so I wonder if they did that intentionally to prevent the opportunity of parents to opt out. Because if it's in the context of health and, let's say, sex ed, that's when you have an opt-out option typically when it comes to some of the more controversial issues that religious parents have problems with. Now, in this case, elementary school, we're talking about 4th graders and 5th graders, super young, like 8, 9, 10-year-olds. You're talking about same-sex couples. Yeah, I agree. I think that especially religious parents want the opportunity to opt out so they can broach these topics with their kids themselves. And they're not trying to ban these books. That's a really important distinction here. They're saying, you know what? Keep teaching, using these books. That's fine. We just want the option to opt out. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. The fact that the school district wants to prevent that, I think, is super problematic, to be honest.
So I agree with you completely on that. I want to go back to the days where we're just reading like Clifford the Red Dog or whatever. We leave it to the parents. And I'm speaking as a Christian myself. Like, I would feel, if I had kids today, I would feel deeply uncomfortable if my kids were indoctrinated and had no choice of stepping out. And you can opt out of sex ed classes. People are given that choice, but you can't for these books.
Well, the issue was they did promise an opt-out initially, though, and that's the thing. When it was introduced in 2022, it's like, so why are you going to offer that and then rescind it a year later? I can see why people would feel a way about that in any context.
Let me get comfortable for this one, because I'm alone.
I listened. Hold on, sorry, Jillian. So I listened to the entirety of the Supreme Court hearing on this, and I thought it was really interesting because, one of the arguments that the defense made, and in this case the defense of course is the school district, is look, we wanted to give an option to opt out, but it became too difficult to do so. This is a diverse school district with a lot of different religions. We're talking about Muslim religion, Christian religion, all sorts of religious folks. And making the accommodations for these students to opt out was difficult because where are the students going to go? We need to have teachers to take care of them as the other students are going through the curriculum. That's an interesting argument. The Supreme Court justices didn't appear to really buy that argument based on what I heard. But what I thought was really fascinating was Justice Elena Kagan, a liberal justice who was, appointed by Obama, actually agreed with the conservative justices in regard to the nature of these books and how the content of these books is not appropriate.
So that's what I want to litigate. I must have missed something, because when I looked it up, here's what I found. Pre-kindergarten Pride Puppy. Can we maybe pull that up?
Do we really need a gay dog?
But
I'm okay with Pride Puppy. I don't think Pride Puppy is a problem.
I think what they're trying to establish is that there are all different kinds of people and all different kinds of families, and by acclimating the kids to, like, oh, look, the next one would be Uncle Bobby's wedding. Like, oh, Uncle Bobby is gay and is married to a man, so it's not so foreign and so gross. And I
Right.
say this simply because the way I was brought up many moons ago, it was foreign and it was gross, and I didn't know anybody who was gay except the interior designer that my dad would refer to as the Queen Bee, or some quote. I don't want to say the D word because YouTube will legitimately like demonetize the episode, but that word being used in a derogatory fashion as I was growing up, and I was homophobic for such a long time. Whereas I wonder if there was Uncle Bobby's Wedding as a kid, it wouldn't have been gross and weird and foreign. So then the next one is first grade, intersection allies. We make room for all. Second grade, My Rainbow, a narrative about a mother supporting her transgender daughter. Now that one, I get it. Transgenderism in kids is tough when it's a separate conversation, but especially when it becomes medicalized, then you lose me entirely. Social transition is also really controversial, but nevertheless.
Again, a slippery slope.
I get it. Prince and Knight, a fairy tale where a prince finds love with a knight. So, in my opinion, they're not like leather daddy goes to the bar.
Right.
You know, it's not sexually inappropriate. It's exposing kids to love is love. Don't let it be creepy and gross.
Do you mind if I make a little quick point here?
Go,
so
do
there
it.
is one example
It's the
that I
whole
want to bring
point.
up that I personally,
Do it.
I would not be okay with my children reading this because I think
Maybe
this
I
sparks,
missed one.
I think this sparks confusion. Sometimes I just use one set of pronouns. Sometimes I change my pronouns. Sometimes I use all the pronouns I can think of. My pronouns are like the weather. They change depending on how I feel. This is not a healthy message to be sending
Absolutely
children.
not.
Not only that, there was another thing that was quoted in an article.
By the way,
where in the book they were.
But that's
wait,
if that's in there, you're correct.
and also, not only that, within a book, they were actually asked to engage in an activity where I believe it was grade 2 children were instructed to pick out certain words. The words were inclusive of things like drag queen, leather, underwear.
Yeah. All right, that's outrageous.
Jill,
If
I
that's
get
in
what
there, you're 100% right.
Jillian, I totally get what you're saying.
are
My,
the-
my
judge a
issue
book
is
by its title.
my main issue is that this thing has largely become a social contagion. I agree that there is a large portion
Transgenderism you're
of
talking about.
and even gayness. Honestly, I would say even gayness. The rate of women who identify as bisexual has gone up astronomically. The rate of people who identify as non-binary has gone up astronomically. Kids are easily influenced. And yes, a large part of that is the fact that this is more socially acceptable. So some of them are more confident to be able to speak out about who they really are. But when we look at the stats and we see that my mom's generation, Gen X, was identifying as LGBT as a rate of 4%, and Gen Z is now identifying at a rate of nearly 25%. 1/4 of them are saying that they are identified within this group. It is more than just we need acceptance. This is a social contagion.
Hold on.
Look, I don't know if someone who's straight can be convinced to be gay. Like I just, I don't know if I'm really buying that. However,
also there's no harm.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I would also differentiate. If you're, I'm sure that people who are religious will take offense with this, and that's not my intention, but there's a monster-sized difference between sterilizing a child with cross-sex hormones permanently, preventing them from ever having an orgasm with a medicalization of gender-affirming care, gender dysphoria, than your kid, a boy kissing a boy, a girl kissing a girl.
Jillian, that's why I agree with that. That's why we should divorce LGB from T, because the T is just like making everything just frankly contaminating all of it.
Okay, hold on. We're going off the rails a little bit here in regard to like the actual case, because the case is specifically pertaining to individuals who have a sincerely held religious belief, right? So you can be as offended by the curriculum as you want. There's no constitutional protection against being offended. However, when it comes to these public schools, they do need to make accommodations for religious families who have sincerely held religious beliefs. And so that's why this case has made it all the way to the Supreme Court. I would have a problem with the school district being forced to ban these books, but that's not what's being asked. These parents are actually being pretty accommodating. They're like, we don't want to ban these books. We just want to pull our kid out of this class and opt out.
Yeah, I see that. And you know what? I'm largely there. I guess what concerns me is that, and I should probably jump to the Jordan Peterson psychotic in just a moment.
Parasitic right.
In a moment, because what concerns me is when we start to go from like, hold on, we shouldn't be giving children off-label cancer drugs for gender dysphoria, and there was no question that it was like less than 1% of the population, and it's skyrocketed, and there are elements inarguably that are social, which are impacting these statistics rising exponentially. But I just worry that if we start to remove any exposure to people who live different, it facilitates othering, and that's dangerous.
I get that.
That's
all
a good
totally get
point,
that.
but that doesn't prevent parents from talking about it at home, or even they can talk about it anytime. All these parents are saying was,
I
we
see
don't
that.
want our students to be, we don't want our kids to be taught that
I
in
get
the
it.
classroom.
And I think
and we can talk
I
about it
wouldn't
on
want
the
any sexual content from my kids, regardless, by the way, straight or gay. So if that's in there, let it.
Especially in
Again, I think
elementary
people
school.
No, you're right.
They're conflating the two issues here. This is not a book ban, and I know people get really heated about that, but that's really not what it is here.
Right.
This is just a classroom issue, and it's still going to be available in the libraries. Like, people can still get it.
Right, okay.
You know?
I see what you're
One
saying.
final thing I'll say about this story, sorry to interrupt you, but look, I get that everyone's obsessed with culture wars, that's fine, but can we at least pay a little more attention to the academics in these public schools? Because a lot of these kids can't read. And that's a huge
so right.
problem.
This is the pandemic
You are
generation.
so
Huge
right.
problem. Okay.
It is.
For
It is.
sure.
I
I want to
mean,
say there was a scary moment I just saw
is
yesterday.
real.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it in real time.
It's bad.
Your
Yeah,
kids, their
Oh my
age-
gosh, my son is going into 8th grade, and his reading, he's got a really high IQ. The kid's intelligent. He does struggle with some dyslexia, but nevertheless, we should have caught him up by now. But in California, the 2 years of not being in school.
It was
and
bad,
by the
yeah.
way, I mean, Anna, because Anna's also in California right now, and I've had to go back and forth quite a bit over the last year. So my kids have been in school in California, and every 5 seconds it rains, no school. Fires, no school. Oh, it's raining again, and there's not 2 roads of egress, meaning 2 ways in and out. So if it rains, there could be mudslides. My kids have missed since January 1st 34 days of school.
That's crazy.
And they're not making up for it. And it's just it's bananas what's going on, at least in California, which is a bit of a I went off piece there, but it's
no,
a
no,
huge
to your
problem.
point,
You're
can
right.
I just say one thing about this generation and to Anna's point? This pandemic generation is suffering.
It's bad.
I just
Yeah,
saw
they are. It is
something
bad.
yesterday that these kids have trouble identifying angry facial expressions. They just can't read it. They have trouble reading social cues. Like
Is
they
that because of the
can't.
mask? Because everyone was wearing a mask during
That
that
too,
time?
but also because they didn't have these interactions that in their most formative
crazy.
eras, they had trouble differentiating between angry and sad.
My kids don't have that problem. They know when I am
they,
pissed.
yes, you are very
I make that
emotive.
very clear.
You are very emotive. But these kids, they were locked in their basement, didn't have a chance to go to the playground, explore in recess.
A lot
and
of
they're
these
so
kids are
handicapped.
It's a
still locked
crime.
in their basement. Like, parents need to take the tech away, give them a bike,
Yeah.
go outside.
I don't know if those days will
Yeah.
ever return. I wish. I
grass.
honestly
Because
wish
that's
they
where their
would.
friends are. That's the other
Yes,
problem is that
exactly.
when I say to my kids, like, want to go have a play date with Gianni? Gianni's on Fortnite right now. And so is Michael, and so is Bodie, and like the kids exist in this
Exactly.
ecosphere online. So
Honestly, I'm
it's
so
tough.
glad-
Which is another topic for another day. But you
And
all
one-
make great points, and it is a huge problem.
One final word. I am so glad that all 4 of us presumably grew up. Like, we had at least 10, 15 years without these things.
Oh
Without,
yeah, you used to
it's
borrow
true.
groceries from your neighbor. You used to play in
Yeah.
the street on your. I mean, I didn't have a perfect upbringing by any means, but I'm so glad I at least have those memories to look
Totally.
to and
Yeah.
cherish. And like, it's sad to say, I don't think that is coming
Yeah.
back anytime soon.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately, and that's
Yeah.
contributing largely to this mental health crisis and why so many people are susceptible to social contagion and these things because
it's
they want to
not-
belong to a group.
Totally,
They want to
yeah.
belong to something. And especially because in the LGBT it's almost become like a protected class. If you're a
has.
part of
Oh,
that
no, it
community,
has.
then
Of
you
course
can
it
do
has.
no wrong. You can
Which-
say no wrong
yeah.
because your ultimate defense against that is, oh, you're a transphobe,
Yeah.
you're a homophobe. So the wrong people flock to it. It also attracts bad actors, All I'm saying is that I just don't think that we need anything else to influence kids' minds on these sensitive topics aside from the people in their life who are close, who they
Amen.
trust, who they can have those conversations
I want to be
with.
done with this one, but I know the counter argument, and the counter argument is, what if their parents are bigots? what if their parents are racists?
Well, don't you think
it's a fight to shape the next generation, and it's, you know, then you'd have to make the presumption that the parents are such awful people, which is unlikely.
Jillian, I don't know if you're intentionally doing this, but that's essentially the woke argument. Like, we need to do this because they're not getting it at home.
Right.
That's what the Democrats are saying. And what I'm saying is,
it's not. But okay, look, it is not their place. It is not. Look, I don't, this is why I don't have kids, okay? Because I would be violent. I would be violent if my state, if my government tells me I'm not allowed to parent my own kid, and that the school district gets to decide.
All right, I got one for you now. I'm going off
I'm
of,
gonna be so
I got one for you.
that. Oh, absolutely.
Hold on. Okay, so this is off of our subject grid here. I believe it's called the Safety Act in California. That the teachers don't need to tell you your kid is socially transitioning.
Yeah.
Now,
That's awful.
What's interesting about this is when people push back on it, they're like, well, the kid could be abused at home. There are laws in place to report child abuse.
So I need
mental and physical. You want to talk about negating the role of a parent.
I need the
God bless you, Gavin Newsom. I swear to God, I hate that guy.
I do too. On this issue, on this particular issue, the left needs to make up its mind.
Yeah.
Okay? Because on one hand, you know, they use this as a cudgel all the time if you don't play ball with what they're demanding. Oh, well, the transgender community, they have a high rate of suicide. Okay. So you're telling me that you are going to keep the identity of parents' children away from them, hide the fact that their child might be transgender, knowing full well that there's a high rate of suicide among transgender youth.
Right.
That's a little bit problematic.
And a social transition does put them on a fast track to medicalization. I believe it's like 60+% greater chances of medicalization, whereas if your child is socially transitioning, you should absolutely, for all the reasons you just mentioned, be an integral part of helping them figure out what is going on. By the way,
I want to provide, like, if I had a child, and it turns out that my child might be transgender, is identifying as transgender, I want to make sure that my kid's okay. I want to be a parent.
It's outrageous. Personally.
He or she might need, you know, help with a counselor or a therapist. I want to provide those resources. The school's not going to provide those resources.
And the issue with counselors and therapists now is they have to affirm at the same time.
Right.
In some instances, they're not even allowed to provide any type of reasonable pushback.
It is,
literally, there's legislative hurdles that prevent them from providing that pushback. Back in the day, some of the first transitions, the first female to male, like long-term transition, a person called Buck Angel, right? Back then, you needed to socially transition and live as the opposite gender. I think it was for a year, maybe 6 months.
As an adult,
yes, as an adult, before you're even allowed to take.
That.
Well, exactly. But I think any person who truly suffers from gender dysphoria, who truly would have their gender dysphoria alleviated by transitioning, I don't think there's anything wrong with those types of stipulations. That, for me, is measured by cult wants.
By the way, you're talking about an adult.
Yes, but
this is a kid that can't even comprehend.
And so imagine how much worse it is for kids
of their
then.
choices.
So imagine how much worse it is for those kids then versus the adults.
Gavin Newsom and his cabal of social justice warriors,
he's the worst,
have everyone terrified. And Nat, I'm going to give a shout out to Minect, okay? Because on Minect, I had a terrified mom from California reaching out to me, an Asian mom actually. She's so terrified of saying the wrong thing to her kid and then getting reported to Child Protective Services.
No, that's wrong.
Because she wants to be accommodating and she wants, like, what if my daughter is lesbian? I want to make sure that I'm embracing of her. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, what am I allowed to say? Like, what if I lose my kid? And this is an Asian immigrant who's just terrified that this is happening in our adopted country.
It's legitimate.
And this is what Gavin Newsom has created, this just hysteria, this tremendous fear. Parents and kids should not be inhabiting this world. This is outrageous.
One more bash on this guy.
Yes.
In 2013, he supported a bill, I think it was Jerry Brown's bill at the time, allowing transgender or biological boys, transgender females, so biological boys who've transitioned or socially transitioned, physically medically transitioned to either or to participate in biological female sports. Charlie Kirk goes on his podcast, This Is Gavin, and he's like, it's just wildly unfair. You supported this, you scumbag.
Yeah.
And you've put no legislation forth to stop it. And I'm sorry, I owned a sports medicine facility. This is where I can really plant my feet firmly in a wheelhouse here on this show. There is no universe where there is a physiological equivalence between a child born a male and a child born a female. XY chromosome versus XX chromosome. A 15-year-old boy athlete, or XY chromosome athlete, however you want to label this, is better than the most elite female athlete in the world at 15. It is one thing to agree that people who are trans should live with dignity, but it does not subvert or negate the rights of another to have a fair playing field.
Girls and women got thrown under the bus real quick.
Yeah, where are the feminists?
Real quick.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. No, it is wild, and I think it's wrong. And science, you either believe in science or you don't.
Right.
You don't get to pick and choose when science matters to bolster your argument. You either believe in it or you don't.
You're so
Yeah, and
spot on.
also, can I just say, this whole thing has made me deeply uncomfortable, and so much so that I couldn't stay in the Democratic Party. Let me tell you what actually happened 2 weeks before Election Day. It was the final donor dinner. These are multi-million-dollar donors.
Can you please establish for anyone who doesn't know you, just give them real quick your background with the Democratic Party?
In short, I raised a shit ton of money for them. I was one of their top donors and fundraisers, raised millions.
Worked for the Clinton campaign and the Harris campaign, correct?
I actually was not an employee. I was part of their National Finance Committee, so I was one of the top donors that their staffers were like beholden to, essentially.
Okay.
It's a very corrupt system, and I'm ashamed that I was a part of it. We can go deeper another time. But what I mean is,
establish like your knowledge set and how unique it is here.
thank you. And I was the one who helped expose the Beyonce and the Cardi B and the $500,000 to Al Sharpton.
influencers.
Exactly, the influencers and whatever. Stuff that they still, I gave them 6 months to contradict me, and they still haven't, because they know I'm telling the truth. But that's not what the point I was trying to make. 2 weeks, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone in advance, I just want to say, but this is the truth. 2 weeks before Election Day, we met at the Ritz-Carlton, of course, and the keynote speaker was Sarah McBride.
Oh,
Yeah,
the trans Congress.
exactly.
Person
Tim
for the
McBride.
trans
Well, I don't want to.
Can we bring up Sarah McBride, Nat? Thank you so much. Okay, so Sarah McBride is a trans congressperson?
Transgender congresswoman, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So
For California or where?
I don't
Delaware.
think so, yeah.
Delaware, okay.
yeah, so she, just so you know, the last dinner is supposed to be the most important dinner. Kamala Harris was supposed to show up, but she couldn't. She had a scheduling conflict. So this was the person that was supposed to represent the campaign. Like, this was the last hurrah. This was like October 20-something. And she spoke with Josh Shapiro. Like, she had top billing. And it made me deeply uncomfortable that she was feted as a hero. Everyone gave her a standing ovation. Like, this is some conquering hero.
Just because she was trans.
Just because she was trans. I was sitting next to the founder of Zillow, and I frankly left. I just couldn't. And everyone is clapping and like cheering for her. Like, why? What did she do?
Let me bring up a point, actually, that I can relate to personally, because I want to shield you from this in the event someone thinks that it's because you're anti-trans. Being a gay person, I've never understood gay pride. Now, I'm not ashamed to be gay anymore. As I mentioned, in my your mom's generation, Gen X's generation, there was a huge amount of homophobia, and now arguably the pendulum has swung obviously the other way. With that said, I never understood that concept, because it's like, what is there to be proud of? I didn't accomplish this. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of a best-selling book.
I think in the beginning, gay pride was meant to make people who might be in the closet and they're terrified of their identity
not feel ashamed,
feel comfortable, and feel pride about what their identity is. So I think that gay pride actually made a lot of sense.
You do? See, I never. I
mean, right now, I remember years after gay marriage was legalized and everyone seemed to be pretty accepting of gay couples. That's when it kind of became a little weird, right? Because it's like, all right, everyone's on board now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't really seen anything from Sarah McBride that makes me uncomfortable. Sarah McBride doesn't seem to go around
what
like
I mean
suggesting
is, like, that's not
the
the
fact that
point.
she's celebrated just because
she
not
was
by
the final
virtue of her
speaker.
accomplishments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be fair, I mean, there are a lot of people in the country who are pretty hateful toward transgender people, even when they're not causing any problems.
That's true.
When we're not talking
That's
about,
true.
medicalizing children. I mean,
Absolutely.
But if she's
an
competent
adult
at her role, then what
Yeah.
does transgenderism have to do with it? And so she should be celebrated on the basis of
She
your work
might-
that you're doing to get to that
She
position
might
versus
have been. She might have.
transgenderism.
I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on this. But I think what makes her different is she might be the first United States Congresswoman who's transgender.
She is.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that
So
she
it's
is.
historic, and
That
I
was the
get
whole
that.
debate with Nancy Mace trying to change the Capitol Hill
Right.
bathrooms
Yeah.
and all of she's
But
absolutely the
again,
first trans
I can't believe
congresswoman.
I'm again the person saying it. For me, it's not an accomplishment to be that.
I agree. I completely agree with you. I agree
Well, thank
100%. And I agree with what you said as well, Jillian. I think that maybe at the time when you've been relegated to the back of society and people don't care about you and you're disparaged and this and that, it makes sense to take the opposite turn when you're trying to make people accepting. Hence pride back in those days. But nowadays, what rights do gay, trans, lesbian people not have? If anything, they're more of a protected class than the average person. I make the same argument when people say, oh, there's so much misogyny and the women, they're so prevented from being able to have the same What is preventing you as a woman from having success? What is preventing you as a gay or transgender person from having success? Nothing. We've already overcome all of these things. Why are we still talking about it? I mean, there's a reason why, obviously.
Well, she's
and it's
a
an
pawn
interesting
also.
Jillian,
She was used as a pawn there. I mean, they clearly are using this individual to put her. Look how
Exactly.
tolerant
They
we
put her
are,
on a
and
pedestal,
they're the
literally.
bad guys. And
You're actually touching on something that I think has been a growing problem with the Democrats' identity, because especially beginning in 2015, and Senator Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader, is on tape saying this during a Washington Post interview. They intentionally were moving away from working class voters and just kind of doubling down on their culture war identity.
Wow.
And when you do that, when you move away from the economic issues that used to make the Democratic Party great,
yeah, the Clinton
and
party.
you just focus on culture wars, of course you're going to expect that. Of course they're going to use various people with different backgrounds as pawns for their political campaigns. I'm not surprised by that at all. But that strategy ain't working anymore.
Absolutely not.
People want to see their lives improved materially.
Absolutely.
And just simply, putting certain people on a pedestal depending on their identity, I think most Americans are realizing that's not really
That's not
improving
what we
my
want.
life.
And thank God, but it
Jillian-
honestly feels like it was just yesterday that was happening. And it really was.
It's still happening. The war
it
is not done. Just the battle has been won.
I
But
agree.
The war is still ongoing. And I want to say one thing to your point.
Yeah.
The T has absolutely hijacked the LGB. Let's not
I don't
conflate
even
the
get
two.
the acronym, though. I've never understood the acronym. So first of all, is it who you like to have sex with? Is it how you identify? And
Jillian, it's
somehow everyone's in it. But you guys, so hold on. The queer people, I don't even know what that means, by the way. Gays are in there, bisexual people are in there. So you sleep with women, you sleep with dogs, you sleep with, everybody's in there, except the heterosexual.
I mean,
intersex,
you guys don't have a
asexual.
letter. Where's the H?
And every
There's ally. No, there's ally. There's ally. So that is for the straight people. They
No,
are
I
part of
think
the
ally,
community.
isn't ally for asexual?
Oh,
Meaning-
that may be.
yeah,
Wait, no, there's two A's now. They
No.
added. No, there's two A's. I'm
No,
totally
maybe
letter.
letter.
You will never get to the bottom of it.
Jillian, every year they add a new letter. It's like
Right,
LGBTI.
It looks like a Wi-Fi postcard
Yeah, exactly.
at this point. There's so many letters. It looks like a Wi-Fi
Wait,
postcard.
to that
For
point,
real.
this is why the Democratic Party is doomed.
does, Jillian.
Hold on. Let me just say one thing. I'm so sick and tired of this identity politics, and it's just not just with the gays. It's also with every single race. I kid you not. I hosted Joe Biden on May 1st. It was supposed to be a normal event, okay? But because I was Asian, they thought it would be a good idea to make Lindy happy by bringing in a lion dance.
What?
I kid you not. There's video of this.
What's a lion dance?
It's something.
You can't just toss that out there and not explain it.
dance.
Is that like the...
Now you can't keep up with us. She's like, LGBA, password code, lion dance. What the heck is a lion dance?
It's something that Chinese people dance on Chinese New Year. And by the way, Chinese New Year is sometime in February. I don't know when, but my event was in May.
That's hilarious.
So there's actually
That's
not.
so funny.
There's
We need to
not
get
a good
Pelosi and her
reason.
This is what I was imagining.
That's precisely it.
Shut
And they had the drums, they had the dancers and the costumes, and my guests and I were we had our jaws on the floor.
That's amazing. That's
because I
so
want to say
incredible.
something. This is not my culture, with all due respect. My culture is Britney Spears.
Oh, okay.
Okay, my culture.
That's
and
also
how I grew
unfortunate,
up.
but it's okay.
But like they didn't ask.
Do you need a hug? I feel like you do.
I miss my Britney.
Oh
I do
my
admit her.
gosh. I'm sorry. Please continue. This is insane, though.
But this is what I mean. Like
that
it was supposed to.
insulting?
It was
It
so
is.
insulting. Like, I'm not an American. I have to be a hyphenated American.
That's crazy.
And the thing is, first it was, they call me AAPI. They call me their AAPI donor, Asian American Pacific Islander. The next year they called me AANHPI.
Wow.
And I was like, what the hell is that? They're like, oh, it's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. And they didn't ask if I wanted to be labeled as their fundraising leader for that. I just want to be American. Why are you putting me in this
Because you're filling a
bucket?
quota. That's
That's
why.
precisely
You're filling
it.
a quota.
But I didn't ask to be, and I don't want to be. I grew up here. America's the only country I know.
I think one of the biggest problems in the country that no one ever talks about is the fact that because of the culture wars and because of identity politics, identitarianism, Americans don't really have a shared identity, right? Everyone is basically instructed to hyper-focus on what their background is, as opposed to who they are as Americans.
Let me give a shout out to my generation here for a second, because we specifically were the love is love generation, and the idea was nobody needed a label.
Gen X, right?
Gen
No,
X.
Gen X was
We
the
can
best
just
generation.
keep- well,
I'm just going to
okay,
keep
take it easy.
No, it was.
We're
Keep it
deeply
at
flawed.
100.
However, that is what we fought for. Love is love. Like, we're all Americans here. We don't need to divide people into their ethnicities and their religious backgrounds and their sexual orientations. It was meant to be like, people are people. I don't know where all of that went so far wrong.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like this acronym here embodies it? And you might have thought
I
I was
would
being
be fine
hyperbolic.
with this.
Wait. Listen to it.
Okay.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Okay, that's where it should
Two-spirit.
end, right?
Okay.
We have queer. We have questioning, intersex,
gosh.
pansexual, two-spirit. What the heck is a two-spirit?
Androgynous.
Anyways, androgynous and asexual. I knew there were two A's. I thought it was allied, but it's androgynous and asexual. Do you feel like these types of acronyms are actually helping?
Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I have no spirit, so I'm kind of like, are they really marginalized?
Can I
have
borrow
two?
one?
Like,
Jeez. My gosh.
Oh my God, I would simply say, if you're going to do that, you have got to include heterosexual people in there. Then otherwise it's exclusionary by design. It's them against us against them, or by the way, wipe it, which I would obviously
Wipe it.
prefer.
Wipe
but if
it.
it's going to exist, because it's like, well, Jillian is a person. I mean, if you were to say, yeah, she's gay or she's married to a woman, okay, fine. You're telling someone like Jillian is married to a woman, and you can define it very quickly. She's lesbian or whatever the hell you want to call me. But when you purposely leave out straight, heterosexual, what are we calling
But
you
isn't that
people?
everybody?
Cis?
That's everybody, right?
Cis.
If we include straight people, that's everybody.
You guys are not in there.
But then if we include straight people, that's literally everyone.
That'd be everyone, and then I'm like, whatever.
I don't know. We haven't included various kinks into that
That's
group,
right.
Well, here's the thing.
All
This is
right.
my other issue that I take with it, Jillian, is like you hear of the MAPS, the minor attracted people, which is a community of pedophiles who are
What?
trying to legitimize
Stop.
the
out.
being a pedophile
The
as
Jeffrey
a
Epstein
legitimate
Society?
sexual attraction.
Well, we have one for that.
And
It's
there's-
actually called pedophile.
I know,
So you can put a
but
P
these
if you
pe-
identify.
but
I
these-
wouldn't do
no,
that,
no, no, no.
though.
These people, they have a flag. They have a flag. They have an acronym. They're trying to rebrand away from the word pedophile, and in large part, they're using the LGBT community, trying to latch onto it. And again, I don't think it says anything
No.
about gays
Amy
at
went
all.
somewhere so scary for me just there.
but
we
Amy
can't-
went somewhere so scary.
It's attracting
Take me back
non-actors.
home, please.
I know.
I'm bringing you back to the center. I'm giving you go. I'm going to let you put a button on this one, and then I'm giving you guys a choice between the last two topics.
No one dared bring up this crap among Gen X. That's why I'm saying Gen X was like the more reasonable generation, right? Mm-hmm. The generation where you can have a political debate and the person you're debating with isn't automatically going to assume that you're a Nazi, right? Gen X, like, they're the workhorses. They put their heads down. They work hard. They don't go around judging other people. I'm obviously making a generalization here, really.
Liberals. But with that said, we have a lot of shortcomings without question, and we're very rigid in the way we approach things. We're slow to innovate, and there's a lot we could say about Gen X that's negative. And I know because I learned a ton from millennials and Gen Z.
I'm just saying comparatively speaking.
No. All those things you mentioned are good qualities, and I'm grateful that you threw those out there. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a choice. We got 10 minutes. We can either, since we've been touching upon the Democrats and all of this wokeism and craziness, you've got front runners for 2028 on the Democratic side, jump ball, or we can address, as I previously mentioned, the woke right comments that Jordan Peterson had made a little while back on Rogan. You want the Dem front runner?
Yeah, I would say that.
I'm down for either one. I could probably contribute more to the woke rights, to be fair.
Sounds like you're
I like
deciding
Peterson a little more, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, you're the
Can you do both in 5 minutes? Like, I'll give you 5
Probably
and 5.
not this panel.
No. I think the work right would be a good
All right,
one
let's
for
look
us
at
to
it.
dive
Lindy,
into.
you win. Okay, you know what? Next show. Because we got 4 years to deal with who's going to be running the Democrats.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
On our next one, we'll start with that, and you'll lead it. All right, guys. Nat, play this clip for me. So you got Jordan Peterson on Rogan talking about the woke right, and this went viral, and I don't even fully understand it, so I'm hoping someone can tell me what this even means. Let it rip, will you?
A new theory of political psychopathology, and I like it quite a lot.
Is this where the term the woke right comes in?
Yeah, well, Lindsay is pointing at that, but he hasn't got the diagnosis exactly right. So it isn't woke. That's not the issue. It's not exactly.
I think
one
what
level.
they're talking about is like similar types of behavior.
He is talking about that. Yeah, no,
but
what he's pointing.
woke just lets you clarify in your head. Oh, it's like that.
Yeah, but the problem is
it's like Antifa.
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem is that argument is predicated on the claim that the ideas are the problem, like the woke ideas, for example, on the right or the left, but that's not the problem. The problem is that 4 to 5% of the population, something like that, is cluster B, that's the DSM-5 terms, histrionic, narcissistic, antisocial, psychopathic, or they have dark tetrad traits, they're Machiavellian, they're sadistic. That's about 4%. Okay, so the question is, how do these people maneuver? And the answer is they go to where the power is, and they adopt those ideas, and they put themselves even on the forefront of that. Right. But the ideas are completely irrelevant.
Right.
All they're doing is they're the Pharisees. They're the modern version of the Pharisees. They're the people who use God's name in vain, right? As they proclaim moral virtue.
Yes.
Doesn't matter whether it's right or left or Christian or Jewish or
I
Islam.
cannot follow this at all, and I've tried 10
I'll explain.
times. Give it to me in English and then dumb it down to 6th grade level, please.
There's a whole backstory to this, and Jordan Peterson is touching on that backstory without actually naming names.
Okay.
And I thought this entire conversation was hilarious because he was essentially trying to convince Rogan to avoid having certain people on his podcast.
Is that what was happening?
Yes,
Candace Owens, right?
100%. No. Well, maybe Candace Owens, but this wasn't really about Candace Owens. This was about two people in particular. One is Dave Smith, who's Jewish and a libertarian. The other individual was I'm forgetting.
Daryl guy?
Yes, Daryl Cooper.
I actually talked to Rogan about this.
Yes. Daryl Cooper, by the way, I mean,
go for it.
I've listened to Daryl Cooper's content. I wanted to actually really understand who the man is before I jump in and start
Anna,
defaming him.
Can you establish what the controversy is around him? And then since you've actually read the content, can you explain that?
Yes. So I didn't read. He has these very long.
Yes, Fear and Loathing in
podcasts.
Jerusalem.
Fear and Loathing in Jerusalem is one of them.
Right.
The other one is called the Epstein Files. Anyway, he does these deep dives into some pretty controversial issues.
A la Candace Owens.
And provides context that you're not going to learn in history, class. And it's in books, but they're not the kind of books that most people are reading, especially in the context of education. So basically, Daryl Cooper's podcast series are interesting. I actually wanted to cross-reference and fact-check a lot of what he was reporting on in the Epstein Files, and I didn't find anything inaccurate, which I thought was interesting.
I get it.
So because of the fact that some of what he puts out there sheds maybe a negative light on the formation of Israel, there are those who are hardcore supporters of Israel who want to silence him. Okay.
Can I?
And by the way, Dave Smith, who's very well read,
Yes.
is a fan of Daryl Cooper. And was defending him when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Now, Joe Rogan had Dave Smith and Douglas Murray on to debate the topic of Israel. That debate never happened because Douglas Murray was hyper-focused on basically telling Rogan, don't have this guy on your show. That was the implied message there, which was really annoying because I was looking forward to hearing Douglas Murray maybe refute some of what Dave Smith has to say. I'm a fan of Dave Smith. I've heard his commentary on this topic, and I'm like, okay, great. I want to hear someone challenge Dave Smith on the substance. None of that happened. It was just, oh, you haven't been there. Like, he basically told Dave Smith, you haven't been to Israel or Gaza. You have no right to talk about this, which is a ridiculous point to make. Now, Jordan Peterson came in, and he was basically trying to make a similar point, but from the perspective of, you know, you might think these guys are good guys, but maybe they're just co-opting, you know, an identity that you agree with in order to
exert their power,
propagandize people with anti-Semitism in this case. Yeah, that's what this is really about.
So two things. I want to throw this out there just simply because I actually ended up having this conversation with Joe because I crossed paths with Jordan Peterson in Austin. And I want to say that he looked, I've only met him twice now and did a show one time, but he looked so genuinely hurt.
Yeah.
And I felt that he was genuinely hurt and felt so genuinely misunderstood for his curiosity and attempts to find common ground with people.
Totally. Yeah.
He is probably the least anti-Semitic person and an individual that seems overwhelmingly, I hope this doesn't get me on his bad side, overwhelmingly sensitive.
Rogan?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He seems pretty sensitive feeling guy. And if you've ever watched him talk about his kids, it really, like he hunts elk and like he gets this uber male kind of persona attached to him. But he's like, I don't really like dunking on people.
No, he doesn't.
And I don't like when people fight and debate aggressively. He's a pretty sweet, gentle soul from what I've taken away from him. And he was really hurt by this whole, you know, you platformed Nazis. And his argument was, and I'm not familiar with Daryl, so this is where I will defer to you.
Yeah.
His argument is that it isn't at all the point that Daryl was making.
Right.
And that Douglas had not read Daryl's content.
No, or listened to it.
And Douglas was misrepresenting what Daryl was trying to say about World War II. Now, I don't know if that's true or false, but you seem to have an idea.
So, hold on. He's going to come out with a World War II series that's apparently very controversial.
Okay.
I have not listened to a single minute of that. I don't even know if it's out yet, so I don't want to, you know, provide any type of defense of that if I haven't listened to it. But in regard to what Daryl Cooper has put out, I have listened to 2 of his very lengthy podcast series. They're very nuanced, and that's the problem. We live in a time and age where nuance goes right over people's heads.
You're so right.
Because people aren't going to sit down and listen to the entirety of the series the way I did, or the way Dave Smith did, or the way Rogan did. Rogan is an intellectually curious person.
Yeah.
And actually, this whole debacle forced me to reevaluate some of my past beliefs as well, because this whole notion of like Rogan has a responsibility and he shouldn't platform certain people. The left was making that argument. I used to make that argument in regard to Rogan platforming people that I disagreed with. Now, obviously, I changed my mind entirely on that. I think that these conversations need to happen.
You're defending Mahmoud Khalil, so clearly you changed your mind.
I think it's really important for people to have their beliefs challenged. That's how I grew as a person, and it's super uncomfortable. It's awful. But you come out on the other end a better person.
100%.
You know?
100%. I think that there is a little bit of a difference between the woke right and what Jordan Peterson is referring to. From my perspective, the woke right is kind of what the left is trying to do with this cancel culture.
Oh my gosh,
it's
so
canceling
toxic.
people from the right who disagree, or anybody who steps outside of the perfect little boundaries of what it means to be this conservative, this Republican. To me, that is the woke right. What Jordan Peterson is talking about is sociopathic narcissists who essentially will hide hijack any belief system.
Yeah.
Conservatism, liberalism, socialism, whatever it is, so they can exert power.
Luckily, you
Yeah.
laid it out because I was like, what are you
I mean, if you watch it
talking
at
about?
length, you can get it. I mean,
I watched the
sometimes
whole
Jordan
thing and-
Peterson,
yeah.
you need to watch him like 3 times to understand.
I know, dude, it's like Russell Brand.
You're like, wait, hold on. Give it to me in English.
Right.
What the heck?
I feel you on that.
ladies,
But he is making there's a clear distinction between the two, what he's talking about with Candace, and I believe he is directing some of it at Candace. I believe some of it is
Yeah,
to
I
do with the
agree,
whole
I agree.
Christ is King scenario, where they're saying that her touting Christ is King is inherently anti-Semitic. I completely disagree with that premise. I think that's completely wrong. To me, that has nothing to do with the woke right.
There's another element to the woke right. There are so many MAGA gatekeepers, these very prominent far-right influencers, and I'm not going to name names, but they all know who they are. And when you convert to the right, they will destroy you.
I've not had that though. No, maybe I haven't necessarily converted to the right,
Jillian,
but
you're Jillian fucking Michaels. Okay, you're untouchable.
That is so not true,
It's just true. You have this halo, but for someone like me and so many others, you have to go through like a communist struggle session, kind of.
Really?
And we've talked about it
I have found it
offhand.
to be the opposite.
Maybe because you're a love for outside of politics.
I
though.
was
think
never-
it's different.
yeah, I was
if
never
you were
woke enough
loved
for the
your
left.
political
That's
views,
interesting.
but
Yeah,
there
that's
is.
interesting.
You are universally loved by non-partisan people, by
Right,
everyone.
and also there's this one person, and
You must have missed me being one of the most polarizing women of all time.
No, we just loved you, girl.
I love you for that. That's okay.
there is this person in the right-wing ecosystem who defamed me when I left the Democratic Party because she thought I was out for her lunch because I left the party.
female
It's just,
thing, though.
but it's the thing is
That's a Gen X female
hold
thing,
on.
by the way.
It's significant because she is one of the biggest figures on the far right, and I had to shell out money for a defamation lawyer. She
I'm sorry.
I was spitting out, I was
Nightmare.
coughing up blood. It was the worst period of my life. It was so difficult. And I'm just saying that honestly, Republicans need to cut this shit out because the whole point of elections is changing people's minds and embracing them, not destroying them because they had a change of heart.
And we've all seen how the people in the middle, the purple people, are going to shift this one way or another.
Yeah.
So moving a little bit more to the center and being more tolerant seems to be the most effective way forward. We are out of time. Closing words, anyone?
This was fun.
This
It was a
fun.
lot of fun. I can't wait to do it again.
Oh my God, you guys made it through and everything. I was worried. I almost took cover, but I feel good about it now.
We got
Jillian,
it was fun.
So hopefully this will be the first conversation of many to come. Please subscribe, follow along, hit the bell notification, click all the buttons that matter. And Anna, where can we get more from you?
You can check me out over at Substack, where I write and do a podcast called Unaligned. You could also watch me on The Young Turks, youtube.com/The Young Turks.
You can find me on X, Lindy Li. I'm Lindy Li on Instagram, everywhere. You can find me anywhere, and I can't wait to chat with you. Also find me on Manette.
Yeah, so you can also find me on Manette, Amy Dangerfield, and I'm also on YouTube as Amy Dangerfield as well.
I'm just going to hang out here. You can find me here.